To the Final Boss podcast, where microphones and mushroom clouds collide in the most mind-blowing chats. We're talking explosive topics, fiery debates, and the hottest guests. Imagine a creative space background, spacey vibes, and out-of-this-world conversations. It's like chilling with your best buddies, but with way cooler sound effects. Every episode, we take on the universe's biggest questions. You know, the stuff that keeps you up at night. And we do it with a bang. Want to know what happens when you mix gaming, movies, and pop culture? Boom! You get the Final Boss podcast. So plug in those earbuds and get ready for a wild ride. Whether you're commuting, chilling, or just need a break, we've got your back. Hit that follow button and join us on this cosmic journey. Trust me, you don't want to miss these explosive chats. Catch the Final Boss podcast now, where every episode is a blast. Stay tuned and stay awesome. Final Boss podcast, bringing the boom to you.
We are. Welcome to the Final Boss Podcast special guest edition Thursday with our 50th episode with our special guest tonight, Mr. Sidney Evans. Before we get into him and who he is a spectacular human being, I like to start each show with my brass tacks. And for those who've been following and my supporters, my smarts out there, you understand that the brass tacks are very, very important, and it's a positive way to lead into our conversation and discussions that we have. So tonight's brass tacks is, I'm going to lead with this. Believe in yourself. You are braver than you think, more talented than you know, and capable of more than you can imagine. So with that being said, we're going to get right into it. Thank you, sir, for being on board.
You're most welcome.
Oh man, this has been in the planning and in the works for some time now, and I really appreciate you for being here and being a part of this journey of the Final Boss and the Final Boss podcast, where we have the most difficult conversations. Let's see. Global brand strategist, executive consultant, best-selling author, and the list continues and goes on and on. Ladies and gentlemen, Sidney Evans.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I received that. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So tonight's episode, ladies and gentlemen, our difficult conversation that we're having tonight, we're going to be breaking down who supports you. And we're going to be talking about the people who support you through thick and thin. And I'm going to allow my brother, Sidney Evans, who's I'm a brother from another mother, to welcome. And we just welcome to the show. Welcome him to the show, and we're going to let him go ahead and get started and talk about him for a little bit, and then we're going to get into our topic of the night. So the floor is yours, sir.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. And congrats to you on having 50 episodes. So big congrats to you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
I'm looking forward to having the difficult conversation tonight.
Yes, sir. So let's start. When we talk about support, we're talking about more than just cheering you on. Can you elaborate and talk about that?
Right. So support is one of these things that we all want, but we feel like we never get enough of, right? And I think part of that problem is because there's a chasm between what you need and what you feel you need. And so support comes in a lot of different ways. It can come in an emotional support way, it can come into a financial way. But really how you should think about support is to really clarify what you need, right? Really clarify what you need as support, because what I feel is one of the biggest challenges with people just in general is there's a lack of clarity, and that's where that chasm comes, right? So you feel like you need one thing, but the people on the other side don't necessarily know that you need that, right? So how do you correct that? And I think the other thing is expecting things from people who can't give it to you, right? And so I think that's a huge issue. I did a video the other day on my TikTok, branding.guy, if you guys want to go to my TikTok. I did a video about stop expecting things from people who can't give it to you. And that, again, comes from understanding what you need, but also having a level of emotional intelligence yourself to understand that where the other person might be just might not be the time. So I think timing is the third component of support, because I've had people who were supportive at one time, but another time they weren't necessarily, depending on what that support looked like. But it's not necessarily that they didn't want to support. It was largely because it might have been the wrong time, right? And remember, there are a lot of different ways to support people, right? So a lot of ways to skin a cat, as they say. So, most people think of it in a financial way, but what I would argue is the vast amount of support that people need is really support around emotional support and around, hey, keep moving forward.
Absolutely.
You got this. That's really the support. When you really look at your life, that's really the support that matters, is what, keep moving forward. Just keep moving forward. You got this. Because I can tell you that imposter syndrome is real. People oftentimes feel, guilty, or they feel like they shouldn't be there when they made, any progress. And I know I've helped a lot of people, and I'm talking about top level people, by the way, not even clients per se, top level people. I've helped them by just saying, keep moving forward. Like, I have a buddy of mine who's a CEO in Europe, and he's having a really rough time with his board. And he said, "What's your advice?" And what would you do with this situation? It was a really complex situation. And I said, keep moving forward.
Right.
Now, so what do I mean by that? Right. So when I say that, I don't mean to oversimplify that, but the fact of the matter is that what does keeping moving forward look like for you?
Right.
You see, what does keeping moving forward look like for you? For him, that meant was he had to make some difficult decisions around letting somebody go off the board. He had to, move some pieces around, essentially chess pieces. Because if you think about it, everybody's life is a chessboard. It wasn't played. I was watching last night. It was a chess championship, and this youngest chess champion he's Dutch, and he beat Gary Kasparov. And what was interesting to me is how he framed the game, and he framed the game around life. And so if you think about life as a chessboard, everybody in your life plays a position.
Absolutely.
That position switches at different times.
True.
It's your responsibility to know when they switch and what they switch to. And that's how you can frame it.
I agree with you wholeheartedly on that, man. It's amazing that you brought up the chess match. Coming from a military background, military family, I too look at life from a chessboard perspective, and understanding that each piece is very not only distinct but relative into the end goal of this thing that we call life, and in this space that we're in right now. It's very important to understand and identify what those pieces are used for, and everybody coming together for the end goal. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing
Yeah,
that.
no worries. Yeah.
We've had conversations, and we've had difficult conversations, and like tonight, there are some difficult questions that I wanted to bring to you and bring to our smarts, because that's where the core of the emotion comes from. Getting to the, as we would say, the nitty gritty. So my question is, it's okay to let go of people, right? Who aren't supportive. But it's a tough conversation, but it's necessary. How do you feel about that? What are your thoughts?
Right. So I think it's a really great question. So first and foremost, let me say this. If you have people in your life who are not willing to have difficult conversations, run as fast as you can.
Oh man.
Fast.
Oh boy. Listen, can I get a cheer for that?
Let me say it one more time.
Yeah.
If you have people in your life who are not willing to have difficult conversations, run as fast and as hard as you can.
Listen, Smart. Listen to what he's saying. Say it one more time for us, please, sir.
If you have people in your life who are not willing to have difficult conversations, run as fast and as hard as you can in the
Absolutely.
opposite direction.
Absolutely.
I'm
Without
telling
a doubt. Yeah. Yeah.
you. The thing about that, you have to. So what I learned in the past, I guess over time, in the last 10 years, has crystallized for me a lot.
Okay.
And I know a lot of people, right? And I expected things from people that didn't give it. I went through that, that roller coaster around. Oh, why isn't this person doing this? Why isn't this person doing that? And we talked about that in the last question. But I did have to set boundaries, and I just had to do this recently,
Right.
and set clear boundaries around what I would accept and what I wouldn't accept. Now, let me give you the sort of X factor and how you handle this.
Okay.
Everybody doesn't need that conversation. So this
No.
whole notion that you have to dignify or justify why you're not doing something is
Right.
absolutely absurd to me.
Mhm.
That's not what that should look like. The boundary is for you, not for them.
Right. Right.
So
Right.
what I would argue is that your ego, oftentimes, or whatever you want to call it, you want to give an explanation why. And what I learned in the last 5 years in particular is no explanation is needed for a boundary. You don't have to.
Wow.
I don't go through, hauling them up and creating a lot of energy around a boundary that's created for me.
Mhm.
I mean, that's just what it is. And so, again, that's a learning curve because I've had to set some boundaries with some people that were really, really close to me for a long time. How do you
Wow.
do that, right? How do you do
Right.
that? And you really have to dig deep and
Mhm.
just understand what you need and what you'll expect from people. And that boundary is really key.
Boundaries are key. And as you stated in the phrase that you mentioned that I asked you to repeat, that has a lot to do with emotional intelligence. And that's a whole nother conversation that we can dive into on another episode. Um, man, I really appreciate your insight, and I always value your input. You're one of the I like to call my solid leaders in my circle,
Thank you.
and I always appreciate your insight, man. Dealing with your high level people that you deal with in the tier one individuals and the C-suite people that you deal with on a normal basis, you're able to translate that, and it's insightful for me because people know me as Turbo the CEO. So eventually I'm climbing that ladder and getting to that point where, you know what, I'll be having consultation with my brother Sydney in reference to those difficult conversations. And I just want to say thank you again, brother.
No, and you're most welcome. And let me just leave you with this before we, and if you have another question, it's fine. You're not climbing, you're there already. You're there already. Which part of what happens is people, they morph like butterflies, literally like caterpillars to butterflies. You morph. And so what I will tell you, back to the keep moving forward, it's your responsibility to stay consistent and to define who you are. So you can't do anything of what I stated prior unless you define who you are. And that has to be unassailable. Who you are has to be unassailable. It doesn't matter what anybody says. Trust me, I have 300,000 followers on Instagram. Not everybody likes me, right? Doesn't matter.
Right. It doesn't matter. Correct.
That matters. And so, again, when you know who you are and you set boundaries, it just becomes like water off a duck's back at a certain point.
Okay.
It's part of the game. And I think that people need to understand that, because if you're not ready to hear criticism or this or that, you're really not ready. That's what
Absolutely.
I'm talking about, right?
Absolutely.
So the fact that you have this podcast, the fact that you stepped up, the fact that you are showing consistency means that you're there already. Okay?
Thank you, sir. And before we close, I do have one more question. I'm glad you allowed me the opportunity to ask that, and this is a heavy hitter, so I know you're ready. How can people expand their support network? I know sometimes you need more than just close family and friends. We're talking about expanding our networks. How can people expand their networks?
Well, what I would argue is that your family or friends largely will provide you, hopefully, some emotional support.
Right.
you really can't grow a business from your family and friends. They can help prop you up a little bit, or if you have some ebbs and flows. What you really have to do is, and it, I know people say, well, networking's dead. Well, what I would argue is the old style of networking is dead.
Right.
But the new style of networking is having clarity around who you're contacting. I get contacted all the time on LinkedIn, and I ignore 80-90% of it. But that's because I have clarity around what that looks like for me, right? So so you have to define what the relationship looks like before the other person can offer value to you, and vice versa.
Gotcha.
You have to have some mutual agreement around value and around what can we both offer. And then, so that's the first thing. The second thing is people they're not intentional around stuff.
Oh man.
They're just not intentional. And it's really, really perplexing to me.
Yeah,
that people they're just not intentional.
True.
And I know that intentionality makes all the difference with any relationship.
It really does. It really does. Yep.
And then the last thing I would say, be consistent, because the other thing that I've seen is that people will contact you to network or to do this, and it'll be 1 or 2 calls, and then it just womp, womp, womp. It just falls off. So, but again, I think it falls off because it's a volume-based thing versus a quality-based thing. If it's quality-based, you're not going to let it fall off, right? If you meet somebody who if you want to be an actor, you meet Will Packer, right? You want to let it fall off?
Right.
Yeah, I don't think you're going to let it fall off if you meet Will Packer, right?
Exactly.
Meet Oprah or somebody, right? So, I think that, people have this hierarchy of kind of who's who. And I can tell you this, it takes one person to change your situation. It takes one person to see your video. It takes one person to say, give me a call, and can change the whole circumstance overnight.
Situation.
And let me tell you something, you never know who's watching.
Absolutely.
I grew from 10,000 Instagram followers to 300,000 within a year.
Yeah. And man, when I witnessed that, I already knew who you were in the truth, but now that your message is getting out there to the populace, it's amazing to see, man. And I'm telling you, you're one of the people that I would check on, at least on social media, daily.
Yeah.
And I have you on my notifications, so when you are out there doing your thing, I see it when it's happening. I have you on my notifications, man, because your message needs to be heard, and I try to share it out as much as possible. So thank you for that. And
I received that. Thank you. I really received that.
Absolutely, brother. Man, your insights have been impactful. I really valued this conversation and the time we had on our show tonight. In closing, do you have anything that you will convey to my smarts, and let the people know where they can find you, and what's your all your links and stuff?
Right. So if I can give you any advice now that would help you exponentially, work on your emotional intelligence now.
Correct.
Because with the advent of AI, relationships are going to become lower and lower on the totem pole.
True.
Well, it depends on who's intentional, who's not.
Yeah.
But if you want sort of an X factor now, work on emotional intelligence. If you are wondering what emotional intelligence is, contact me, and I do an assessment called the DISC assessment system. And it's what Fortune 500 companies utilize to evaluate their talent. If you want a DISC assessment, contact me. Turbo has my email, but it's SydInc, SYDINC @gmail.com, and we'll set up to have a DISC assessment. And if you want to find me on social media, Instagram is Sydney Evans Global. That's Sydney with an I, Sydney Evans Global. Emails with a Y. And on TikTok, it's branding.guy. Okay. And if you want the book, Run Your Own Race, just Google Run Your Own Race, Sydney Evans on Amazon, which released #1.
Oh, tell them, yes, the book, the link.
Right. So it's Run Your Own Race is the book. It released #1 on Amazon and Business Consulting. It's been out 4 years. An ebook is coming very soon as a follow-up to that book. And I'm working on my second book now that'll come out next year, but it's Run Your Own Race. And it's the 12 steps that I utilize to build a powerful personal brand when I left corporate. So it's soup to nuts what I did, 12 steps. So Run Your Own Race.
Man, so amazing, man. Again, thank you again. Ladies and gentlemen, that is our show tonight. This is our 50th episode. To my smarts, please like, share, and subscribe to content. You know where to find me. I'm on YouTube. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Facebook. I'm on TikTok. We're on Spotify now as well. If you're driving and you're not a visual person, you want to listen into the audio, you can go out on Spotify and check us out there. That will conclude our show tonight. Our special guest for the 50th episode, Mr. Sidney Evans. Find him again at www.sydneyevansglobal.com. And that's a good night.
And shout out to all the smarts. Thank you for
the smarts. That's my smarts.
Take care, guys.